She was sitting across the table from the man she loved while reading his obituary. Same face, same name, dead 3 years ago. And he had no idea she had just found out. The phone was still in Lena's hand. His coffee was still warm on the table. He had stepped away just 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes was all it took for everything she thought she knew to completely fall apart. 3 weeks before that moment, Lena had not wanted to move to Ashford at all. She had not wanted to do much of anything after Marcus. 3 years with a man who was quietly building another life behind her back had left her empty. So she packed 2 bags, took a remote job a friend offered her, and drove 6 hours north to a town she had never visited and knew nobody in. The plan was simple. Know no one, want nothing, just work and heal and be invisible. Ashford made that very hard. The streets were narrow and quiet. The coffee shops were warm. The people smiled at strangers like they actually meant it. For 2 full weeks, Lena kept her headphones in, her eyes down, and stayed invisible. It was exactly what she needed. The night she met Ethan, it was raining hard. She ducked into a small bookshop called Marlowe's just to get out of the rain and walked straight into a tall man carrying a huge pile of books. They hit the floor in every direction. "I'm so sorry," she said, already picking them up. "I wasn't looking." "That was my fault," he said, crouching beside her. "I was blocking the whole doorway." She looked up. He was already looking at her. Not in the way some men look, like they're making a decision. He was just looking, calm and open. Dark hair, a little stubble, and eyes so dark brown they looked almost black in the low light of the shop. He picked up a book and handed it to her with a small smile. "Good taste," he said. "I knocked it out of your hands. Still good taste." His name was Ethan. He bought her tea from the little counter at the back, and they sat in 2 old mismatched chairs while the rain hit the windows and talked for 2 full hours. He was easy to talk to in a way that surprised her. He didn't check his phone once. He didn't wait for his turn to speak. He just listened like what she was saying actually mattered. When she walked home that night, something in her chest felt lighter than it had in a very long time. They bumped into each other 2 days later at the market, then again at the library. By the 3rd week, they had stopped pretending it was coincidence and just started making plans. Evening walks by the canal, late dinners at the little Italian place on Harbor Street, Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers at the corner table in Marlowe's. Lena told herself it was just friendship. She told herself the way her heart lifted when she saw his name on her phone meant nothing. She had been wrong about a man before. She was not going to do that again. But she was already falling. She just hadn't admitted it yet. It was in the 4th week that the first strange moment happened. She pulled out her phone at the canal one evening to take a photo of the 2 of them. The light was golden and perfect. Ethan shifted slightly so the camera only caught the side of his face. "Come on, just one photo," she said, laughing. "I look terrible in photos," he said, and smiled, and the moment passed. But a week later, when she mentioned tagging him in something online, he changed the subject so smoothly she didn't notice until 20 minutes had gone by. And when she asked casually about his family, something behind his eyes went quiet. He was still smiling, but the warmth had moved back somewhere she couldn't reach. "Complicated," he said. "Old story. I'll tell you sometime." She let it go. Everyone had something they were still carrying. She understood that better than most. Then one Friday, he sent a short text. Something came up. Back Sunday, sorry. No call. No details. When he returned Sunday evening with 2 coffees and a book he thought she would like, he looked tired in a deep way, not on his face but behind his eyes. She asked if he was okay. He said yes, the way people say yes when the real answer is too long and too heavy to get into right now. She chose to believe him because she wanted to, because the other option meant admitting that the cold feeling growing quietly under her ribs might be right. It wasn't suspicion that made her search his name. It was something much smaller. She wanted to send him an article and realized she wasn't fully sure of his last name. Cole, she thought. Ethan Cole. She typed it in with the town name just to check. The first result was a news archive link. She clicked it without thinking. She read the headline, then read it again, then a third time slowly, because her brain kept refusing to take it in. Ethan Cole, 31, remembered 1 year on from the accident that took his life. The photo next to those words was his face, not someone who looked like him. His face, the same jaw, the same dark eyes, the same quiet expression. The article was 3 years old. The coffee shop kept going around her. Cups clinked. Someone laughed at the counter. Music played softly, and Lena sat completely still in the middle of all of it, feeling the floor slowly tilt under her feet. When Ethan came back to the table and sat down, she looked up at him. He looked back, and whatever was on her face made his go very still and very careful in that way she now recognized as his tell. "Lena?" She turned the phone toward him without a word. He looked at the screen. She watched his face go pale, not the pale of surprise, the pale of a man looking at a door he was sure was locked and finding it wide open. He stood up, didn't speak, didn't look at her again, walked straight out of the coffee shop into the gray afternoon and was gone. She sat there for 40 minutes calling him, 6 calls, 6 voicemails. Then she drove to the library and spent 3 hours going through every old article she could find. 4 years ago, Ethan Cole had worked as a junior financial analyst at a local firm called Harwick Capital. The accident happened on a rural road late at night, not long after an investigation had been opened into stolen client money. The car went into a river. No body was ever found. The official report said accidental drowning. The firm settled with clients 6 months later. One partner got a suspended sentence. The case closed, and that was the end of it. Lena drove to the address listed in the oldest article and knocked on the door of a woman named Miriam Cole, listed as Ethan's mother. The woman who answered was in her 60s, quiet gray eyes, the careful stillness of someone who had learned to be cautious with strangers at the door. She looked at Lena, then she looked past her at the empty street. "Come inside," she said. Miriam made tea and stayed quiet for a long time after Lena explained everything. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat and steady, like someone who had rehearsed this moment many times, hoping it would never actually come. "My son didn't die in that accident," she said. "He staged it. He came to me the night before and said he had found proof of what the partners at that firm were doing." Someone had already made it very clear what would happen to him if he told anyone. He said faking his death was the only way out that didn't end in a real one. She put her cup down. I haven't seen him since that night. I got one phone call 4 years ago from a number I couldn't trace. He said he was safe. He said don't look for him. Did he say anything else? Lena asked quietly. Miriam looked at her for a long moment. He said the people who did this still had friends inside the police. He said if he ever came back and the wrong people found out, it wouldn't just be bad for him. She paused. He said it would be bad for anyone standing close to him. Lena drove back to her apartment. He was already there. She had not given him a key. The lock was fine. She stood in her own doorway looking at him sitting in the dark on the edge of her sofa, hands on his knees, his face more open and unguarded than she had ever seen it. You need to let me explain, he said. I just came from your mother's house, she said. His face changed completely. She told me enough, Lena said, stepping inside and closing the door. You saw something. They threatened you. You faked your death and disappeared, and now you're back in the same town where your old life was. Her voice stayed level. She was working hard to keep it that way. Why here, Ethan? Why come back to Ashford? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the one thing she did not expect. Because of you. You didn't know me before any of this. No, but I knew your name. I knew who your father was. The room went very still. Your father is David Marsh, he said quietly. He was the outside auditor on the Harwick Capital account. He signed off on the paperwork that let them keep operating for 2 extra years before anyone noticed. I don't think he knew what he was signing. I think he trusted the wrong people, but his name was in the evidence I found, the evidence that made them want me gone. I kept a copy. I held on to it for 4 years, waiting for someone I could trust enough to give it to. Lena could hear her own breathing. You came here to find me. I came here to find you, he said, and then He stopped. I didn't plan for the rest of it. I need you to know that. I didn't plan for any of it to feel real. But it does, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, he said, just that one word, nothing added to it. For 3 days after that, Lena barely slept. She read every document Ethan gave her. She called her father and listened to the silence on the line when she said the name Harwick Capital. The silence of a man recognizing something he had buried and never gone back to. She watched Ethan move quietly through her apartment like someone who already knew this was temporary and was trying to take up as little space as possible before the end came. Because it was going to end. The documents would go to a journalist Ethan trusted. Once the story broke, Ethan Cole would officially be alive again, and his quiet ghost life in Ashford would be over. On the 3rd night, she found him at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, hands around a cold cup of tea, staring at nothing. Are you scared? She asked. Yes, he said without pausing, but less than I was before. Before what? He looked at her. In the thin light from the window, his face was tired and completely honest in a way it had never quite been. Before you, he said. Before I remembered what it felt like to have something actually worth losing. She sat down across from him. They stayed there until the sky outside started to go light, and the birds came back, and the town slowly woke up around them. They didn't talk much. They just sat together in the last quiet hours before everything changed. The article went out on a Thursday. By Friday, Ethan Cole was officially alive. By Saturday, 3 names had been passed to prosecutors. By Sunday, Lena's phone had not stopped ringing, and Ethan had been moved to a safe location, and her apartment felt very large and very empty, in a way it hadn't before he was in it. She was sitting in the quiet that Sunday evening when her phone buzzed once. Unknown number, no name. She answered. "I'm sorry it ended like this," he said. "It hasn't ended," she said. A long pause. Then she heard him breathe out slowly, long and deep, the breath of someone who had been holding it for 4 years. "No," he said softly. "I suppose it hasn't." 2 weeks later, Lena stood on a quiet train platform 2 towns over. One bag. Nobody knew where she was going. The morning air was cold and still. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around right away. She just stood there, heart going fast, eyes straight ahead, waiting. A hand came to rest gently on her shoulder, and she exhaled for what felt like the first time in 3 weeks. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with a choice. Lena chose to show up, and whatever came next, whatever danger was still out there, she had decided that showing up was worth it. Because the alternative was going back to that quiet apartment and being safe and completely alone. And she had already tried that. It didn't work. That is the story of the man Lena loved, the man the world believed was dead, and the truth that was hiding in a small town neither of them planned to stay in. If this story kept you watching until this very moment, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we bring you stories exactly like this one. Real emotions, real twists, stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Subscribe now and turn on your notifications so you never miss one. And drop a comment below. What do you think Lena typed back to him? We read every single one.